Finally, I applied for a trademark status, trademark protection for my logo that I've been using for quite some time that I created in Adobe Illustrator. So yeah, I designed it myself. Ghettosapien, inner city intelligence, floating brain cloud, and the whole 9 yards. And it was a friend of mine who was an attorney who said I need to. It would be wise to file for a trademark and protect my intellectual property. So that's what I did, and we'll see how it turns out. Got 4 months, and hopefully, I'll get back and I'll actually own what I created. But in the meantime, this might be a good time to explain what Ghettosapien means and the history behind it. So let's do that. Hello, everyone. This is Keith. Welcome to the soon-to-be trademarked Ghettosapien channel. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about what Ghettosapien means and a little history. And hopefully it's interesting for you. So let's do this. So Ghettosapien, totally made up word. It's two words I just kind of threw together. Ghetto, of course, being a real word. Its root is it's basically used to be associated with Jewish people, meaning ghetto was an area where the Jews were forced to live in a city. Later, of course, became associated with black and Hispanic people. But yeah, it started off as something that was exclusive to Jewish people at first. And sapien is the Latin word for wise. So I took the two, Ghettosapien, and loosely interpreted as inner city intelligence, because I'm not wise. I don't rise to the level of wise. So occasionally I have glimmers of intelligence. So let's go with that. Inner city intelligence. Now, what's behind that is the fact that I am from Brownsville, Brooklyn, and living in the inner city is really, it had an effect and a very large influence on my political philosophy. And that's what this is mostly about, politics and culture. So I hope that kind of makes sense to you, but we'll go into a little more detail. So yeah, grew up in the inner city in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And a little background on Brownsville. I didn't know, it's just a rough neighborhood, first of all. And it's been rough for a long time. I didn't know how rough and how long until when I was in junior high school. My homeroom teacher assigned us to write a paper on Brownsville. Now, of course, growing up in this neighborhood, your entire life, it doesn't seem all that it lends itself to much history. It's not like it's Washington, D.C., or San Francisco that had the earthquake, or Chicago that had the big fire. Like, what is there to write about that's interesting in Brownsville? Wasn't I surprised? Junior high school, went to the library, found out a couple of interesting things about Brownsville. I'll give you some of the bullet points. One, it was like the home stomping ground of Al Capone when he was a teenager. He started his gang there before he went to Chicago to become the murderous head of the mob that he was. Goodfellas, if you ever saw that movie, great movie. That's based on the life of Henry Hill, a mobster. Well, he wasn't a made man, but wise guy. That was in Brownsville, Brooklyn, on Pickett Avenue, where that was based out of. Murder Incorporated, which was, if you ever into like mafia history and all that stuff, they were well-known Jewish mobsters. They were really assassins more than anything else, and they used to get their assignments out of a magazine. A newspaper stand on Livonia Avenue, which was the station I used to I used to catch a train there. But even more infamous was that on Amboy Street, around the corner from where I grew up, was Margaret Sanger, where she started her first clinic and went on to probably kill more than her institute, Planned Parenthood. I'm sure ended way more lives than a mob ever did. So yeah, Brownsville, dark history. I grew up around the corner from a drug rehab clinic, and I saw shootouts as a kid. It was a rough neighborhood, but it wasn't always like that. When I was probably like 9, well, before that, a little younger, we lived next door to Section 8, not Section 8, sorry. We lived next door to a 4-story walk up, pretty much like this. Walk up meaning there's no elevator. You had the fire escape if you had to get out in case of a fire. There was also your air conditioning and your terrace because you'd sit out there in the summer and hopefully didn't catch a bullet while you're trying to stay cool and not sweat, sweat bullets while you're trying to sleep. So yeah, that's pretty much your standard building in Brownsville's 4-story walk up, and we lived right next door to one. But it was actually pretty nice when I was a kid. A lot of my childhood friends were from live next door, so I liked it. We used to play a lot. It was clean. It was safe. It was 2-parent families. Almost most of the kids I grew up with at that time, they had a mother and father in a home, and that building was no different. It was mostly occupied by married couples, and very clean. Like I said, very safe. No problems. Not really a hub for crime or anything like that. It was just really nice little neighborhood. I enjoyed it. But I'd say when I was about maybe 13 or 14, the neighborhood changed dramatically. And a lot of that was because of government programs. Brownsville has been like single party ruled for decades. Long before I was born, it was just one party. And it was a big government party, believed in the war and poverty, things like that. So the owner of that 4-story walk up next door decided to convert the building to Section 8 housing. Now, HUD, who runs the Section 8 program, they don't really check to see, how well the money's being spent or what kind of effect it's having on the neighborhood. Because if they did, they would stop the program. It was a train wreck next door. With subsidized rent, it allowed single mothers, young single mothers, to afford those apartments. And it was a mess. They'd sit out on the stoop all day. I'd see them as I left for work because I still worked up and I was going to college with 18 and working. So I'd see them out there either early in the morning sometimes. Well, I'd say just early in the mornings like 12, 1, 2, 3 in the morning because I used to come back. I used to hang out at the club and stuff like that. So I'd come back and they were still out. Even at 19, I was like, man, that's irresponsible. You're out there almost my age, like 20 years old, and you got your kids are out there too. Again, I was amazed even as a late teenager running the streets myself, but I was working and going to school, and I knew this behavior was bad. You shouldn't have your kid, your little girl out at like 1, 2 o'clock at night calling her bitch, bitch, bitch. And yeah, the stuff they were calling their children, I was like, this is going to cause some mental scars for these poor kids. But that's what Section 8 attracted. The crime, it became a hub for crime. There were purse snatchers, crackheads. Someone tried to snatch my mother's purse in our own driveway, and he was from next door. Duh. Fortunately, we called the cops. And the cops came and took him away. They used to throw dirty Pampers out of the window and garbage out of the window on our cars. It was just a mess. And it gave me a really bad taste in my mouth for government programs because what I saw, what it did was Section 8 divorced work from money. And once you start doing that, you go down that road, you erode the work ethic, and you come up with a really bad class of citizen. I came up with this name because of I saw what working someone without pay does. It makes him a slave. Two ways to make a slave: work him without pay or pay him without work. Either way, you're divorcing work from money. It's just not going to work out very well long term. So I became a political pragmatist because of growing up in the inner city, hence Ghettosapien. It's because it's something I learned from living there and observing and just looking at it dispassionately and not thinking, well, I need to be tribally and stick with my party no matter what damage it's doing to my neighborhood. Nope. Nope, not at all. You gotta go with what works, and you gotta get rid of what doesn't work. And government largesse does not work, and that's what I learned. And it was all there illustrated in the building next door when it went from private ownership with intact families to Section 8 with government intervention, and I got to see what it does to people. So that's the history behind Brownsville and Ghettosapien. I hope it makes sense to you now. But either way, it'd be nice if you commented, liked, shared, or subscribed. Take care.